She was a dragon born beneath the silver gaze of the moon, yet cast aside as worthless because she could bear no children. Her pack stripped her name. Her elders exiled her. But when the night grew darkest, the moon itself whispered to her and marked her for a destiny greater than any clutch of eggs. This is a tale of Lysra the dragon, who was rejected for her emptiness, yet chosen for her strength. Stay with me until the end, because her fire will burn brighter than any who doubted her. And before we begin, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell, so you never miss another story of betrayal, redemption, and justice written in fire across the stars. The night sky stretched wide and endless, painted in silver and shadow. The moon hung heavy, its pale face gleaming with quiet authority, casting rivers of light across the mountain ridges where the dragons roost. To the pack, the moon was more than a celestial body. It was a lawgiver, the silent judge, the ever-present eye that chose who was destined to rise and who would fall. Among the brood that night stood Lysra, scales the color of deep forest green, polished with hints of gold that caught the lunar glow. She was powerful in shape, with broad wings and a graceful tail, yet she stood apart from the others. Her beauty was undeniable, but her fate had been sealed long before this gathering. She had no children. Worse, she could bear none. And in her pack, an infertile dragon was worth less than prey. The elders circled her, their horns adorned with silver rings that clinked as they moved. Dragons of all ages gathered to witness, their wings folded respectfully as the ritual began. Fertility was survival. The ability to lay eggs was a measure of worth, of honor, of legacy. Those who bore many hatchlings were exalted, their names etched in stone. Those who bore none were forgotten. The eldest, Sarikar, his scales black as night, stepped forward. His voice carried like thunder down the ridge. Lysra, daughter of the moon's flame, you were given the gift of life, yet you failed to give life in return. We have tested you. We have waited. No egg, no hatchling. You are hollow. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Some pitied her, most sneered. Lysra lowered her gaze, heart pounding against her ribs. She had known this moment would come. Still, standing in its shadow, she felt her throat tighten with despair. She longed to speak, to argue that she was more than her womb. But the words died before reaching her lips. To challenge the elders was to defy tradition, and tradition in her pack was as solid as stone. The moonlight ceremony demanded judgment. A fertile female would step forward, prove her worth by the clutch she carried, and be showered with gifts of prey and jewels. An infertile female was stripped of her crest markings, the shimmering etchings carved into her scales since hatching. Without them, she was nameless. Without them, she was no one. Sarikar gestured with one massive claw. Two younger dragons approached Lysra, their claws glowing faintly with the elder's magic. They pressed against her scales, and the markings that had once identified her as Lysra the Strong, Lysra the Swift, Lysra of the Skyfire, dissolved into smoke. Her scales turned plain, bare of all identity. The crowd exhaled in unison, the ritual complete. "Begone!" Sarikar declared. "You have no place among us. The barren are cursed, unfit to lead, unfit to mate, unfit to stand beneath the moon's blessing. You will leave our ridges and never return. Should you cross this border again, you will be slain." Lysra raised her head at last. The words burned, yet in that moment she caught the moon's glow in the corner of her vision. Its light touched her scales, soft, almost tender, as though offering comfort. The sensation steadied her trembling wings. She did not beg. She did not cry. She simply turned, stretched her wings, and flew into exile. The wind screamed in her ears as she left the ridges behind. Below her, valleys of stone and barren wastelands stretched for miles. Few dragons survived here for long. Without a pack, there was little chance of hunting large prey or defending territory. Exiles were expected to starve or fall to beasts. That was the unspoken truth behind the elders' judgment. Lysra landed on a cliffside when her strength waned. Her claws scraped against rock, her chest heaving. For the first time in her life, she was alone. No voices, no kin, only silence and the distant hum of the wind through crags. She curled her wings close and closed her eyes. Yet sleep did not come easily. Memories of hatchlings laughing, of mothers cradling eggs, haunted her thoughts. Her heart ached not simply for herself, but for the dream that had been torn from her. She had always longed to nurture, to protect, to pass her love to children. Now that dream was ashes. But as the moon climbed higher, silver light spilled across the cliff. Lysra stirred. She felt it like a whisper against her mind. Soft, patient, ancient. Her eyes snapped open, pupils narrowing to slits. For a moment, she swore she heard words carried on the wind. Not barren. Chosen. She whipped her head around, wings twitching, but the land was empty. No dragon. No beast. Only the vast sky and the glowing moon. Her heart pounded harder. She tried to dismiss it as a trick of exhaustion, yet the feeling lingered, wrapping around her like an unseen shroud. Night stretched into dawn. Lysra hunted what she could, small deer, stray mountain birds, but her thoughts kept circling back to that whisper. It was not the voice of her pack. It was not the condemning thunder of Sarikar. It was something different, older, deeper. On the second night, she dreamed. She stood in a silver plain, no earth beneath her claws, no air around her wings. Only light. The moon filled the horizon, vast and alive, its surface glowing as though it were flesh and not stone. From its light emerged a figure, neither dragon nor beast, a form made of shifting luminescence. Its voice flowed into her bones. Lysra, you are not hollow. You are not forgotten. You are mine. Lysra bowed, though fear trembled in her chest. Why me? I have nothing. I cannot give children. I am cast aside. The figure's light flared, washing her in warmth. The pack sees with narrow eyes. They bind worth to womb. But I see deeper. An alpha is not born by bearing. An alpha is forged by fire, by choice, by spirit. And I have chosen you. Lysra gasped. Alpha, I am no leader. I am no mother. You will lead, the moon whispered. You will protect. My fire burns in you, though you do not yet know it. Rise and you will see. The dream shattered as Lysra jolted awake. Her scales glowed faintly silver, veins of light threading across her body. Her chest ached with heat, but it was not painful. It was alive, pulsing in rhythm with the moon above. She staggered to her feet, heart racing. The whisper was no dream. It was real. For a long time she stood at the cliff's edge, staring at the horizon. The elders had cast her away. Her name had been stripped. But the moon, the power that all dragons revered, the goddess above all laws, had spoken to her, chosen her. For what, she did not yet know. But the thought filled her with a fragile spark of defiance. She spread her wings, silver light shimmering faintly along their span, and launched into the sky once more. Exile had ended her life as she knew it, but something greater had just begun. Lysra wandered the barren cliffs, where no dragon lingered for long. Hunger gnawed at her belly, and her wings ached from restless flight, but she pressed on, guided by the faint silver fire now pulsing within her. The moon had spoken to her, and though doubt weighed heavy on her heart, she could not deny what she had seen and heard. The moon had chosen her. Yet chosen for what? Days passed. The wasteland stretched endless, broken only by jagged stone and the carcasses of creatures that had fallen to predators. Lysra hunted small prey and drank from thin streams, but her strength dwindled. Her scales had dimmed, and her wings dragged low with exhaustion. More than once she wondered if the moon's vision had been nothing but the delirium of exile. But each night, as the silver light poured across her body, she felt the whisper again. A gentle call, a reminder that she was not abandoned. On the seventh night, she scented something strange. The air was tinged with smoke, not from dragon fire, but from metal and fuel. The smell was sharp and foreign, unlike anything her kind had known. She followed the trail, cautiously winding down into a valley where jagged rock formed natural walls. There at the center of the basin was something that did not belong. A vessel of gleaming steel cracked open like an egg broken upon the earth. Sparks hissed from its torn hull, and lights flickered faintly along its spine. Figures moved around it, not dragons, smaller, fragile-looking yet filled with purpose. They carried tools that glimmered in the dim light. They spoke in voices strange and clipped yet filled with urgency. Lysera crouched in the shadows, her breath shallow. She had heard tales of humans before whispered in the old stories, visitors from the stars who sometimes cross the skies in fire chariots. To most dragons these were myths. Yet here they were of flesh and bone. One of them turned suddenly and froze as his eyes locked on hers. He shouted, and others spun to face her. Some raised their devices, which spat beams of light, though not in aggression but in defense. Lysera stepped forward slowly, her claws scraping stone. She expected them to flee or to strike, but they did not. Instead, the first human lowered his weapon and raised a hand palm open. "Stay back," he said, though his voice trembled. Lysera tilted her head. The words were foreign, but the tone was clear. Fear, caution, but not hatred, not disgust. She spread her wings slightly and lowered her head. She did not want to frighten them further. The humans whispered among themselves. Then one smaller than the rest stepped forward. She had dark hair pulled tight, and her eyes shone with determination. She held no weapon, only a container of water. Slowly she approached until she stood a few paces from Lysera. "You are hurt," she said gently. Lysera blinked. Hurt? Yes, she was weakened, but not mortally so. She did not understand why this fragile being would risk herself to draw near. Yet something in the human's gaze reminded her of the moon's whisper. Not judgment, not dismissal. Something closer to reverence. The human set the container down before Lysera, then backed away with open hands. Lysera sniffed the offering, then drank. The cool water slid down her throat and eased a fire in her chest. She lifted her head, and the humans watched in silence. From that moment, something shifted. They did not treat her as cursed or worthless. They did not question why she was alone. They saw her, and they accepted her presence without scorn. In the days that followed, they shared food, and she guarded them from beasts that prowled the wasteland. The bond between them deepened not through words, but through actions. At night around the broken vessel, the humans looked up at the moon and spoke in their strange tongue. Lysera listened and caught words she recognized repeated often. Luna, mother, guide. Her chest stirred with recognition. They too revered the moon, though they named her differently. Could it be that the moon had led them here to her? One night the dark-haired woman sat near Lysera's folded wings. She pointed at the sky and spoke softly. We follow the moon to travel the stars. Her light shows us the path when no other beacon can. Without her we are lost. Lysera felt her scales shiver. The moon had spoken to her. The moon had marked her. Now these humans claimed they too followed its light. Perhaps this was no coincidence. Perhaps this was destiny. When predators came creeping from the shadows, one night Lysera rose to defend. A pack of scaled beasts lunged, teeth flashing. The humans scrambled to protect themselves, but it was Lysera who leapt forward. She roared, and silver fire burst from her throat. The flames were unlike any she had known before, brilliant and blinding threads of moonlight woven into fire. The beasts shrieked and scattered, fleeing into darkness. When the smoke cleared, the humans stared wide-eyed. They had seen dragon fire before in their travels, but never like this. One of them whispered a word over and over. Alpha, Alpha. Lysera's heart thundered. Alpha, a word her own pack had denied her, a title they had stripped from her before she could claim it. Yet here these strangers offered it freely, not because of her fertility, not because of eggs she had not laid, but because she had protected them, because she had chosen to stand and fight. The dark-haired woman stepped closer, her eyes reflecting the silver flames still flickering across Lysera's chest. You are chosen, she whispered. The moon chose you. Lysera lowered her head until her snout brushed the ground near the woman. She felt tears sting her eyes, though dragons rarely wept. The moon had not lied. She was not barren. She was not hollow. She was chosen. For the first time since exile, Lysera felt something take root inside her that was stronger than despair. A sense of belonging, a fragile but undeniable hope. The humans had no need of her eggs, no need of her lineage. They needed her strength, her fire, her guardianship. They saw her worth where her own kin had not. But even as warmth spread through her chest, shadows stirred on the horizon. Her pack had not forgotten her. Scouts prowled the borderlands, hunting for signs of trespassers. It was only a matter of time before they discovered the humans and saw them as intruders to be culled. And if they found Lysra with them, her betrayal would be branded unforgivable. As the moon rose once more, casting silver over the broken vessel, Lysra lifted her gaze to its vast glow. She felt the whisper stir again in her bones. Alpha is not born of womb, but of will. She closed her eyes and exhaled a plume of silver smoke. The choice lay before her. She could flee and spare herself, or she could stand and protect these fragile beings who had shown her kindness when no one else had. The path was dangerous. The pack would come. War was on the horizon. Lysra opened her eyes to the humans who looked to her with trust and hope. She knew then what the moon had meant. This was why she had been chosen. Not to bear life, but to guard it. The valley had grown quieter since the night of the silver fire, yet Lysra could not rest. Her wings trembled with unease as she watched the humans work tirelessly to repair their vessel. They gathered metals and rewired strange circuits, but the scent of fear hung around them. They knew the dragons of the ridge would come. Lysra knew it as well. She hunted for them and shielded them from beasts, yet her heart ached with a question she could not escape. Could she truly stand against her own kind? The memory of Sarakar's voice thundered in her skull, hollow, cursed, unfit. For so long she had believed those words. But then she remembered the way the humans had looked at her when the silver fire had poured from her chest. Not as a curse, not as a hollow shell, but as a protector. One evening, as the sun bled red across the horizon, the dark-haired woman approached her again. She carried no tools, only a strip of cloth, upon which strange symbols were drawn. She laid it at Lysra's claws and looked into her eyes. This means leader. It means Alpha. Among us it is the mark of one who carries the burden of all. Lysra touched the cloth gently with her snout. The woman placed a hand upon her scales and whispered, "You are our Alpha." The word echoed in her heart with both weight and fire. Alpha. She had been stripped of her name, and yet here a new one was born, not through lineage, not through eggs, through choice. The days grew harsher. From the peaks, Lysra began to sense her kin. Scouts moved along the ridges, their roars echoing faintly at night. They were searching. The humans saw her unease and asked in worried tones what troubled her, though their language was broken between them. Lysra could not answer with words, but her growl and narrowed eyes told enough. The enemy drew closer. One night, as the humans slept, she climbed the ridge to watch the horizon. The moon hung full above her silver light, cascading over the world. In its glow, she felt the whisper again, gentle yet firm. "You are not prey. You are not exile. You are Alpha." Tears burned her eyes. For so long she had begged the moon for hatchlings to prove her worth. Now the moon gave her something greater, a purpose beyond blood. But with that purpose came danger. She knew what must come. To lead was to fight. The following day the first clash arrived. A trio of dragons descended upon the valley, their wings slicing the air like blades. They were scouts, lean and sharp, their eyes gleaming with cruelty. When they spotted the humans, their laughter rolled like thunder. Vermin. Trespassers. The pack will feast. Lysra roared and launched into the sky, silver flames already crackling along her throat. The scouts blinked in shock to see her alive. One sneered. "The Baron returns. Have you come to beg for scraps?" Her answer was fire, a searing plume of silver that lit the air like dawn. It struck one scout across the wing, and he spiraled down screaming. The others hissed and struck back, but Lysra's fury was stronger. She slashed through the air, claws gleaming with moonlight. Each strike carried not just strength, but the fire of defiance. She was no hollow shell. She was alive with purpose. The humans below cried out her name, or the closest sound they could make. Their voices reached her ears and lent her strength. She fought not for herself alone, but for them. When the last scout limped into the horizon, trailing smoke, she hovered in the air, chest heaving. The humans cheered their fragile voices, rising like a hymn. But victory brought no peace. The survivors would carry word back to the pack. Sarakar would know. The Alpha of the Ridge would hear that the Barren One had risen with strange fire and strange allies. War was inevitable. That night the humans gathered around her once more. They worked with the scraps of their vessel, crafting plates of metal, which they fastened to her scales with straps and bindings. The armor gleamed beneath the moon, reflecting silver light. One man carved new markings into the plates, not the old names stripped from her, but new ones, symbols of their tongue. Leader, Guardian Flame. Lysra felt a swell of pride. They had given back what her pack had taken. They had restored her honor not through birth, but through choice. She stood taller, her wings spreading wide as the humans gazed upon her with trust. Still fear gnawed at her. She could not ignore the truth. Her kin were many and strong. Their fire could reduce the valley to ash. She alone could not hold them back. The moon's whisper returned as if hearing her doubts. Alpha is not one alone. Alpha leads. She looked at the humans then. Small, fragile, yet courageous. They had weapons of light, though weak against dragons. They had clever minds and quick hands. Perhaps this was the moon's intent. Not for her fight alone, but to lead these unlikely allies in defiance of the pack. The next dawn confirmed her fears. From the ridges came the sound of Roar's dozens of voices melding into a storm. Smoke rose in distant plumes. The pack was gathering. Lysra's heart hammered. The humans looked to her, their faces pale with dread. She spread her wings and bellowed a roar that shook the valley. It was not a roar of fear. It was a roar of defiance. She would not yield. She would not cower. She would lead. The humans rallied, their spirits lit by her fire. They placed their faith in her as she placed hers in them. Together they prepared. They sharpened weapons, they reinforced armor. They lit beacons to blind approaching foes. Lysra trained in her silver fire, focusing its heat until she could bend moonlight into a searing lance. Every night she grew stronger as though the moon itself fed her flame. On the final night before battle, she returned once more to the ridge alone. She gazed at the moon hanging vast and radiant. Her heart beat with terror and with hope. "If I fall," she whispered, "let me fall as Alpha, not as exile." The moon's glow deepened, and the whisper came one last time. "You will not fall. You will rise." She bowed her head, tears slipping down her snout. Then she turned back toward the valley where humans waited for dawn. She knew the war was coming. She knew Sarikar and the Alpha of the pack would come in fury. Yet for the first time in her life, she was not afraid. She was chosen. She was ready. The night of reckoning arrived beneath a blood-red moon. Smoke curled from the ridge where the pack assembled their wings, blotting out the stars, their roars, shaking the air. The humans huddled around their broken vessel, their weapons glowing faintly in trembling hands. Lysra stood before them, her armored scales gleaming with silver light, her chest burning with the fire of destiny. From the ridge descended Sarikar's black scales, reflecting crimson under the moon. Behind him came dozens of dragons, their eyes filled with scorn and bloodlust. At their center towered the Alpha of the pack, a massive beast with wings broad, as storm clouds and fire burning in his throat. His voice rolled like thunder. "The Baron returns. You dare to stand among vermin. You dare to burn our scouts with cursed flame. You defy the will of the pack." Lysra stepped forward, her wings spread wide. The humans watched from behind her, their voices hushed in awe. She locked eyes with the Alpha, her chest trembling, yet steady with resolve. "I do not defy the moon. I follow her. She has chosen me. Not you. Not Sarikar. Me." The pack roared with laughter cruel and deafening. The Alpha sneered, his fangs glinting. "You claim the moon favors a hollow shell. You claim she would cast aside her fertile chosen for one who bears nothing. Fool, you will burn tonight." He lunged, his massive form colliding with hers in a crash that split the earth. Fire burst from his jaws, searing the air, but Lysra answered with silver flame. The clash lit the valley as though dawn had come. The humans cried out, shielding their eyes from the brilliance. The Alpha's fire was fierce and heavy, but Lysra's silver blaze pierced it, cutting through with divine heat. Their wings battered the air, creating storms of dust and rock. Claws slashed, sparks flying with each strike. Pain lanced across her side as his talons tore her scales, but still she stood. The humans rallied below, shouting her name, and firing beams of light into the sky to distract the other dragons who circled hungrily. Some dove toward the humans, but Lysra's roar sent them scattering. She would not allow her kin to harm them. These fragile beings had seen her worth when her own kind had spat on her. They were hers to protect. The alpha struck again, his tail whipping across her chest, knocking her back into the stone. Blood ran down her scales, hot and bitter. For a moment the world swam. She heard Sarakar's laugh. The moon chose no one. You are nothing. But then she felt it. The moon's glow bathing her body. A whisper filling her mind. You are not barren. You are chosen. Rise, Alpha. Strength surged through her limbs. She rose, her silver fire igniting brighter than ever before. The Alpha charged once more, but she leapt into the air, wings snapping wide. She channeled every ounce of moonlight into her chest. The fire within her roared to life until it seared brighter than the sun. With a cry that shook heaven, she unleashed it. A beam of silver flame split the sky, tearing through the Alpha's fire and striking him full in the chest. His roar turned to agony as he was hurled back, his wings toward his scales burning with celestial heat. He crashed to the ground, shaking the valley with the force of his fall. Silence fell. Dust swirled through the air. The pack stared in shock, their Alpha broken before them. Lysra landed, her claws digging into the stone, her chest still glowing. She looked upon her kin, and her voice carried with unshakable command. The moon has spoken. I am Alpha now. The dragons hesitated, torn between rage and fear. Then one by one they lowered their heads. Even Sarakar, though hatred smoldered in his eyes, bowed beneath the silver light. The law of the pack was clear. Strength and the moon's blessing ruled above all. Lysra had both. The humans cheered, their fragile voices ringing through the valley. Some wept, others fell to their knees, staring at her with reverence. The dark-haired woman stepped forward, her eyes wet with tears. You are truly Alpha, not just to them, to us. Lysra lowered her head until her snout brushed the earth before the humans. She saw in their eyes the truth. They had given her what her kin never had: faith, respect, belonging. She would guard them with her life. She would lead not through fertility, not through tradition, but through choice. The moon rose higher, its light flooding the valley, washing over dragon and human alike. For a moment all were still in its glow. Lysra felt the whisper one last time. You were never hollow. You were never cursed. You were always mine. Tears slid down her snout. She raised her wings high, her roar splitting the night. It was not the roar of exile, not the roar of despair. It was the roar of an Alpha. The humans raised their weapons in salute, their voices joining her cry. The dragons bowed their heads, and the valley echoed with a new truth. The barren was no longer barren. The hollow was no longer hollow. She was Alpha, the moon. And as she stood with her wings spread wide, the silver fire still burning in her chest, she knew her story was only beginning.